This presentation is called Productivity Tips and the Power of Keystone Habits. Okay, so let's start off with the power of an idea. And here's the idea, is that small adjustments to your behavior, which are then solidified by habit, can have a massive impact on your life and on your business. So how many of you feel this way? You've got way too many things to do, and you just don't feel like you have enough time. So when we started our stay-at-home business, this is how we felt. I was still working full-time. We were trying to run this business, but we were trying to juggle. We were trying to juggle the demands of family and relationship and the stay-at-home business and the other business and all these things, and we never really felt like we were giving what we wanted to really any one particular aspect. Okay? So how did we find some insights? How do we make productivity insights that have allowed us to take our business to the next level? I want to share those with you today. There's three. Number one, we learn the power of keystone habits. Two, we learn that not all actions are equal. And number three, we learn the power of the word no. Now, one thing I just want to say before I get into explaining these principles is that inspiration is useless without implementation. So it's one thing to listen to something. It's one thing to get inspired or maybe motivated by something. But if you don't put it into action, you're not going to see results. So where did we find our insights? I want to just go through those really quickly. Number one, we took our insights from the book The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. We also found inspiration from the book The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And finally, we found inspiration from the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And we also took a lot of inspiration from various YouTube and audio recordings from Darren Hardy, who again is the author of The Compound Effect and the publisher of Success Magazine. Okay, so productivity tip number one, keystone habits. Keystone habits are this. It's that there's certain actions or habits that are what are defined as small wins, and that they have an actual trickle-down effect on the rest of your business and your life. And what they do is they help other productive and effective habits to flourish. Now, Charles Duhigg, in his book The Power of Habit, teaches a powerful story about keystone habits that I want to share. And it deals with Michael Phelps in the Beijing Olympics in the 200-meter butterfly final. So Michael Phelps had a routine. He'd wake up at a certain time. He would have the same type of breakfast. He would engage in the same stretching pattern. He would engage in the same pre-race workout. He would listen to the same music, and it was all timed and patterned so that by the time he stepped up on those racing blocks, his mind was in peak state and he was completely ready to go, and everything was there and perfect. The variables were set up and he had ritualized it. Now, when he dove in to the water for the 200-meter fly, everything up until that point had been his pattern and his ritual. But as soon as he hit the water, there was a major variable that changed. His goggles started to fill up with water. Now, for those of you who watched the race, you know what happened. He was able to increase the speed as he went out, despite his goggles being filled with water, and he was able to win the gold medal and win. He was asked after the race, what did it feel like to basically race blind? What was it like? And his answer to the reporter was fascinating. It teaches a powerful principle. He says, it felt exactly as I had visualized it. And in order to understand that comment, you have to go back into his life. You have to look at it when he was a young man learning to swim, and when he was discovered by his coach with very unique genetic gifts. And his coach thought you could take these physical gifts and add to it a powerful mind, and he could be the greatest Olympian ever, which many people feel he is. So what did his coach do? Well, his coach, as a young man, his coach would teach him to visualize. And the technique that Michael was taught to use was what was called the videotape technique, where after his practice, he would go home and he would imagine that he was watching a video. And on the video was different races of himself. And as he got better and better and better at the visualization, his coach started to change the variables, where maybe everything wouldn't go perfect in the race, but yet he would still win. One of the variables that was changed was that actually the goggles filling up. So when it happened on August 13, 2008, he had already seen it in his mind. Now Charles Duhigg goes on to teach about how, for Michael Phelps, visualization was a keystone habit that affected all the other aspects of his life. So in our business, we decided that we needed to establish some keystone habits. And as we did, we saw them having a powerful impact on the rest of our business and our life. So what were the keystone habits that we established? We started to write our goals down on a consistent basis. We started to have planning sessions where we go over specific plans. We started to prioritize what the key actions are in accomplishing our goals. We would use other visualization techniques and planning techniques. The way that we took the business in terms of our organization and our visualization had a massive impact on our ability to juggle the other things, because it wasn't juggling now, because we became focused. Visualization and organization became keystone habits for us. So why are keystone habits a productivity tip? Really because they help you to focus on what you want the most and help you to identify what the key steps are in obtaining what you want. Okay, so let's move to productivity tip number 2. This one's a pretty simple one. We hear it all the time, we talk about it, but not all of us put it to practice. It's the principle that not all actions are equal. There's smart work versus hard work. So here's the fallacy. Having a to-do list doesn't mean that you're making effective use of your time. If your to-do list is completely full of busy work that isn't actually helping your business. This is the thing that we see big time when we're training our team in a home-based business. Because at a home-based business, you don't have a boss telling you that you need to do these 5 things. You've got to figure out on your own what you want to do. And so for a lot of people, the first thing they look to is just being busy. And that being busy is being productive, but it's not always. This goes to the next maxim, I guess, productivity maxim, in that hard work doesn't guarantee success if you're doing the wrong things. So there's a great story here. It's told by Darren Hardy. It talks about when he first started out as a real estate agent. Before he got into the speaking and training business, but when he was a real estate agent, he wanted to be the best. So the logic in his mind said, well, if I want to be the best, maybe I should model what the best are doing. And so he went to the person in his office who was the leading realtor, and he said, what are the key things that I should be doing? And that person said, you need to be spending the maximum amount of your time in either negotiating a deal or closing a sale. And so what he recommended to him was, he said, take a stopwatch and actually time yourself when you're engaging in these most important actions. And so Darren Hardy did, and he went out and he said he worked so hard the first day, just worked an absolute, like 13, 14-hour day, just pounding the pavement. And he was doing the stopwatch. And at the end of the day, he looked at his stopwatch, and the amount of time that he had actually spent either negotiating a sale or closing a deal was 20 minutes. And so he realized there, wow, I'm working my butt off here, and I only spent 20 minutes doing what I was told is the most productive thing. I've got to change this. So he started to focus more on what are the most productive things in his business to get to the point where the vast majority of his day was on the things that would give the most value to his business. So on that topic, he teaches about understanding your vital functions and your vital priorities. So let's look at vital functions first. Here's the principle. I can't do it all, so what are the most important actions that I need to do to build my dream business? I'll tell you with our business right now. So Megan and I have defined what the vital functions for each are. For Megan, it is actually doing parties and doing shows. We find that her time is best spent literally doing parties and shows, and also working with new consultants to help them, to teach them the mechanic side of the business. My vital functions is spent in training our team. So we try to spend the maximum amount of time in our vital functions. I'm going to tell a story about vital function. It has to do with Joel Osteen from the Lakewood Church in Texas. I believe the biggest church in America in terms of weekly attendance. And let me just take it in there. So here's the going on the tip. Not all actions are equal. When Joel Osteen was building his church, he was finding that he was falling into what a lot of entrepreneurs fall into, which is the having so many functions to fulfill and just being torn between all these functions. And he was doing everything from administration to promotion to everything was him. And he realized that the very best thing that he could do is to work on his sermons. So he made a decision to focus just on his sermons and to spend the vast majority of his time creating the best sermons that he could, and find other people to do this other administrative stuff. Focus on his strengths. Focus on the things that add the most value. And by doing that, he's been able to grow the largest church in terms of weekly attendance in all of America. So let's move on now to vital priorities. So vital priorities is that you've got to look at your business and say, what you've got your functions, which is what you want to do, but your priorities is there may be time sensitivities. And in this particular time, what needs my attention the most? We all know that Sensi, Velada, Grace Adele, there's different sales seasons and cycles. So you got to ask yourself, so what season am I in right now? And what should be my priority this season? As we move into the fall season and winter, we know that that's the time that we sell. We got to be booking parties. We got to be booking shows. We got to be selling. That's our prime selling time. Other times of the year, sometimes in the summer, that's a really good time to prospect or to train your team or to reconnect. You got to look at your business. So there's a two-layered analysis. Number one, when I'm spending my time, what should I generally be spending my time doing? But number two, take it a little bit deeper. The priorities is taking the analysis a little bit deeper and saying, right now, should there be a particular priority that I'm focusing on? And you'll see that even with my training. The trainings, for example, in the summertime, focus a lot on recruiting because it's a good time, and especially August with the 2-for-1 kit. We do a lot of recruiting training in August. As we move into the fall, the training focuses more on selling. So I'm forming a vital function and that I'm training, but I'm changing up the training to align with the priorities. And you combine them for best effect. I think the last slide I explained that. So question, how do I determine my vital functions? Here's some ideas. Model success. Don't reinvent the wheel. What's worked in the past for your upline and your mentors? Also, you're an original. So what's worked for you in the past and what hasn't worked for you in the past? And what are your unique gifts and strengths? And then finally, as I talked about, what are the Sensi seasons? What actions are best suited for this season? Okay, moving to productivity tip number 3, the power of no. A quick story from Richard Branson. Okay, there's a story, Darren Hardy tells this story, one of his audio CDs from Success Magazine. He said he knows Richard Branson, and he was contacted by an organization who said, we would like you to basically be a broker here. We would love to have Richard Branson come speak at our organization. We'll offer him $100,000. And so Darren Hardy conveyed the message. Richard Branson's people said he's not interested. So then the organization comes back and says, we'll offer him $250,000. And Richard Branson's people come back and says, not interested. And so the organization comes back, they says, $500,000, we will have a car at the airport, he'll be in and out in 2 hours maximum. Richard Branson's people come back, they say, not interested. And so then the organization comes back and they said, how much money does he need to do this? Richard Branson's people come back and says, Richard Branson is focused on these 3 priorities right now. No amount of money can get you to get him to speak. Fascinating. And the principle is this. He has key priorities and he understands the power of no. And if this engagement didn't align with his priorities, he wasn't going to do it, no matter what. He wasn't being swayed. Another story is the iconic Steve Jobs. His advice recently to an incoming Nike president CEO. This is a YouTube interview that I saw. He said to the incoming president, Nike makes some of the best stuff in the world. Well, let me give some context on this. So the president went to Steve Jobs, their friends, and said, well, what's your advice for me? He goes, Nike makes some of the best stuff in the world, but you also make a lot of crap. Keep the good stuff and get rid of it. Again, this is the power of focusing on a few key things and saying no. So, what does that mean? Well, you're building your business. Let's say you've got your family. That's a key priority. You know, you maybe have church things, that's a key priority. You got your business, that's a key priority, but you can't have 20 key priorities. So when you're asked to volunteer or do this, like, you've got to focus on things that are most important to you, and you have to tell people no. It's one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the hardest things to do is to tell people no, but it's one of the most powerful. And you see people who succeed on great levels, they understand the ability to focus on a few key priorities and nothing else. So I'm going to give you some tips on giving you some help on saying no. The next slide here. So what makes it easy to say no? Well, when you really understand your why behind your goals, and when that goal becomes so compelling and clear to you, you will focus on it and block other things out. So understand your why. That's the biggest piece of advice. I'm also inspired by what we'll call the Covey Quadrant. Many of you may be familiar to this. We spend, you see, you've got these quadrants: urgent, non-important, urgent, non-urgent, important, not important. Unfortunately, a lot of us spend too much time in not important, not urgent, which is just trivial stuff. But the biggest trap by far is this quadrant 3. Urgent, not important. So this is the pressing things in our day. And this one is the biggest trap in our day and age with email and smartphones, and it's constant. There's constantly somebody trying to get your attention. You've got to learn to focus on what your priorities are, your vital functions, your vital priorities, and not to sound, I can't say this without being blunt, is that some people can wait. Some people can wait. You've got to take control of it, and you've got to learn the power of no. So other strategies for saying no. Chunk. Use specific times, block times, and do that only. I do that all the time. I will say, for this hour, I'm going to create a training video and nothing else. And so I literally will turn off Facebook and I will turn off my email. I won't look at it. Another idea is creating transparency. So when with your team, say, I'm going to be gone this amount of time. You want to immerse yourself. Activity that you're doing, you will be more effective by doing that than trying to do 100 things at the same time. So social media. Social media can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Our business depends on social media. We connect with our team. Every single day we're on social media. But it can be a trap, because you can be working with your team and all of a sudden you get distracted by some random person's pictures. A couple slides here with some thoughts. So has this ever happened to you? Because it has literally happened to me. You go on Facebook to provide some training to one of your directors and you end up spending 20 minutes looking at your friend's recent vacation pictures. How about this next one? You go on Facebook to update a team page and you get IM by someone and end up talking for 10 minutes about nothing particularly important and definitely not helpful to your business. That's definitely happened to me. How about this last one? You go on YouTube to upload a new video for your search engine optimization efforts and you end up spending 15 minutes watching funny looking animals. This has happened to me. So, the next slide is 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, they add up. We waste hours a day on social media. We don't even realize it sometimes because it's done in small increments. We're not trying to eliminate downtime, but we're trying to focus on what's most important to move our business forward. If we understand our why and what's driving us, this will make it easier. But learn to say no. So to summarize, we have to establish powerful habits. Number 2, we got to remember that not all actions are equal. Some are more important than others, and we need to spend time doing the ones that are more important. And finally, we've got to learn to say no. You put these productivity tips into play in your business, and I promise you're going to have results.